Hello, everyone, and good day. Welcome to today's webcast, sponsored by San Jose State University School of Information, Follett, Rutgers, and Library Journal. This is Michael Stevens. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Information at San Jose State, and I'm going to be moderating today's webcast. Before we dive in, and we have some cool speakers to hear from, I have a few little housekeeping type things to go through. So, are you ready? If you are experiencing technical problems, please use the red Q&A button on the audience console, and the webcast tech team will get to you as soon as possible. If your screen becomes locked due to local network congestion, try using F5 to refresh the webcast console. If you're on a Mac, please use Command R. The slide presentation is available for download in the green Resources folder on the bottom menu dock, and a certificate for continuing education credit is also available in the Resources folder, and it is labeled Certificate. A title list is also available for download. Now, if you have questions or comments while we're going through our speakers today, please send those in at any time via the red Q&A box. I'm going to be watching them as the speakers are going, and we have built in time in our hour today, hopefully about 20-25 minutes, to take some of those questions and actually hear from the speakers. I'll also invite you to please join the conversation on Twitter. I've just tweeted myself, and I saw some other people tweeting that they were attending. You can tweet us at Library Journal and use the hashtag LIB 2014. And I noticed we're sharing a hashtag with it looked like a rock music festival of some time. So whatever LIB 2014 was for those folks as well. So please feel free to share your aha moments and whatever else you encounter during our time together. So I'm going to go a couple slides in. Here's our folks. I will introduce them one as they go up, but I want to show you this and talk to you just a little bit about where we're coming from and why we are here. I've been teaching a class called the Hyperlinked Library at the School of Information for a number of years, and I've also been doing research and work and presentations around the topic of the Hyperlinked Library. And the Hyperlinked Library really falls in line with the concept that Henry Jenkins put out into the world in 2006 concerning participatory culture. Participatory culture shifts the focus from individual expression to community involvement. And it actually addresses things like artistic expression and sharing your creations and contributing. And that's one of the things that we can do now is we can put our ideas out into the world and out into our very wonderful LIS little tiny bit of the world and share and participate and talk about things and learn. And one of the ways we have done this since 2011 has been through the Library 2. Whatever the year is conferences. 2.011 was the first one, 2.012. 2.013, and now this past year, 2.014. So what we're doing with this webcast is we're bringing together some of the notable speakers from that conference, that free, global, online conference. You don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to get in your car to attend this conference. How cool is that? And you can participate from anywhere. So we brought together some folks who did some really dynamic presentations, and we wanted to share them with you in this format. So we're talking today about the Hyperlinked Library and that model, which is a very playful library, a very experiential library. It's all about experience. We are also talking a little bit about how our users experience the world. And in 2005, this is almost 10 years old, Wade Roush wrote an article in Technology Review from MIT called Social Machines. And he said, we have entered, and this was 10 years ago, he says, we have entered a time of continuous computing, meaning there is ubiquitous Wi-Fi, hopefully ubiquitous Wi-Fi. There is also cell networks that allow us to move around and constantly be connected with our devices. I'm watching my time, but I'll tell you a tiny little story. I did the keynote for West Virginia Library Association 2 weeks ago, and it was at a beautiful place called Snowshoe Mountain in West Virginia. And this would be a place that Rao should probably say, oh, this is not a place of continuous computing, because in this location is the giant radio telescope, and they have a complete quiet zone. So cell phones hardly worked at all on top of this mountain. It was absolutely incredible to be at a library conference and not have a lot of connectivity. But it was absolutely a beautiful place, and it was an absolutely wonderful group of people. So I thought that was kind of funny for that other side of the coin for continuous computing. So going forward, and I'm going to turn it over to our speakers in just a second, I think one of the things that we can look at is opportunities for learning in libraries, and for sure, for us to be continually learning, as well as helping our library users continually learn. And there's a wonderful model that the Horizon report used for their report from this last spring called Library as Classroom. And I was the Creative Classroom Research Model. And I kind of flipped it around and wrote a column about it in LJ called the Library as Classroom. And I really think we're hurtling toward this idea that the library can be a place of experiential learning, both in physical space and in virtual space. So what I think we will hear today, and what this will bring to you all, is some ideas about how we might create these experiences in libraries. And just as the Library 2.014 conference offered many, many examples of how we might encourage participation, how we might use emerging technologies, and how we might welcome people into our physical and virtual spaces, I think these presentations will as well. So with that said, and I'm going to advance one more slide. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce today's first speaker, and yay for the work that Samantha does. Samantha Adams-Becker is Senior Director of Communications at the New Medium Consortium. So Samantha, welcome, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael, for that warm welcome. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be speaking here today. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the latest Horizon report that was released in August, the NMC Horizon Report 2014 Library Edition. And for those of you who have not yet downloaded the report, and we are well over 1 million downloads across 135 countries, which is super exciting, there is a link on the screen to download it. And just a heads up, it is a free report, and it is licensed under Creative Commons so that it could be easily shared, remixed, adapted, whatever your heart desires. So for the NMC Horizon report, it was one of many Horizon Project publications that we've done. In 2002, we started exploring emerging technology uptake in the higher education sector, and that was in 2004. And so fast forward to today, 2014, we really heard over the past few years needs expressed and desires expressed from library professionals for there to be a report that expressly analyzes the use of technology in academic and research libraries. And not only that, but examples of creative applications, discussions about the trends accelerating technology, and of course the other side of the coin, the challenges that are impeding technology uptake. So we are really excited to add the library report to our own report library this year. And of course, you got to give praise where it's due. This report was a collaborative effort between a number of organizations and institutions. The University of Applied Sciences, otherwise known as HTW CHUR, the TIB Hanover, and of course ETH Bibliotech Zurich, and we thank them for their critical support. So when I initially presented this at the Library 2.014 conference, I always like to kind of leave some, or give you some questions, give the audience some questions to think about in the back of their minds as listening to some of the topics in the Horizon report. So these are some questions potentially to take back to your libraries, to your institutions, to be thinking about in tandem with reading the Horizon report. So we're thinking about preparing for trends and technologies that are coming or already here in some cases, and of course, figuring out strategies to tackle some of the most pressing challenges. And a couple things to know is when we talk about trends in the library, we categorize them as fast, mid-range, or long-range. And just to note, just because it's a long-range trend doesn't necessarily mean that we see it as 5 years off. We actually see it as something that could already be here. It's just moving a lot slower than those fast ones. So it could be a trend that we're already experiencing that's kind of moving like molasses, whereas the fast trend is moving like a high-speed train. So in talking about the trends in the Horizon Report, here are the 6 trends voted in by the expert panel. And I should back up for a second and let you know that as much as I'd love to take credit for this list you see here today, it is actually the work of an expert panel that we convened that shows all the topics that you see here in this report. We gave them an online collaborative workspace and a month and a half along with prompts and resources so they can engage in an asynchronous discourse and ultimately choose the topics they feel will be the most influential in the library sector over the next 5 years. So here are the 6 trends, and because this is an abbreviated presentation, it may look like I'm kind of scrolling through them a little quickly, but I encourage you to download the report to get that more in-depth view. But one of the first trends discussed by the expert panel and voted in is the evolving nature of the scholarly record. And what that really means is that scholarly communication is definitely changing and has been for quite some time. What was traditionally considered to be, print-based journals, monographs, these scholarly communications now really reside in networked environments that can be accessed through an expansive array of publishing platforms. Electronic publishing, as we know, has now allowed people to access scholarly documents through mobile, for example, and they can be published as soon as peer review has taken place, allowing this communication to happen more frequently and more publicly than ever before, and we're no longer limited to that text-based final product, which is really exciting. One of the examples of that would be the University of California, Davis, and their scholarly communication project, which was established for the sole purpose of kind of getting in front of these trends in scholarly communication and figuring out, what the next steps are so the university and library can be prepared. And so for every single topic in this presentation, I try and give a good in-practice example with a short link. So I highly recommend and encourage you guys to pursue these projects, to read more about these projects after this podcast is over. And those are just a couple of the trends, that's just one of the trends. Again, there's 5 more, so highly recommend you download the report. So we can't necessarily talk about the exciting trends without looking at the other side of the coin, or in this case, challenges. So the NMC Horizon Project categorizes challenges not necessarily by how much time it's going to take to solve a challenge, but by how difficult it is to solve, or the scope of the challenge. So the challenges that we address are categorized as either solvable, meaning we understand and know how to solve them. Solutions are already in place. They just need to be implemented at scale. Difficult, meaning we understand the problem. It's just a matter of putting a solution in place. And then wicked, which means we don't even know how to define this challenge, let alone solve it. And we need help from people like you, from library professionals, to get some common language around these challenges. So one of the challenges in the report that we're going to talk about today is embracing the need for radical change, which you can see on this list of all the challenges is categorized as one of those wicked challenges. Then you can see here are the 5 others that were voted in by the expert panel. But the reason I picked embracing the need for radical change to talk to you about today is because it's one of those seemingly insurmountable obstacles. There's so many things that go into embracing the need for radical change. It's about infrastructure. It's about making sure that staff receives adequate training for these changes. It's about adapting to rapidly evolving technology landscapes, and so on and so forth. Academic and research libraries are facing ongoing leadership issues that really impact every aspect, and they're being more and more savvy about trying to incorporate what researchers need and what students need and what faculty needs in designing library programs and resources around those needs. And so one thing that we know is that a number of libraries are going through major organizational changes. and that is especially the case at the Woodward Library at the University of British Columbia. So they were tasked with the very difficult activity of merging their circulation and reference desks and teams into one area, which from the outside looking in may not seem like a major feat, but we all know that that change is a really, really big one and impacts a lot of people and a lot of resources. So as a potential solution or a way to alleviate any issues, the team there decided to do something a little differently. Rather than having leadership come up with a plan, they invited every single library staff member to sit down at the table when creating the strategic plan. And so the strategic plan for merging these two groups was the product of everyone at the library, and as a result, things were included in that plan were providing continuous support and creative inspiration for staff, which we all know when the day-to-day is so busy, it's pretty hard to come by. So highly recommend you check out the Woodward Library Strategic Plan as a really good example of how the entire library could come together and prepare for a major change. Now, then the next thing that we look at is competition from alternative avenues of discovery, another major challenge. So how do libraries remain relevant in a Wikipedia and Google world? It's a really big challenge, especially when people are, when lots of people are, instead of going into a library, Googling something, exploring Wikipedia, which we know, for better or for worse, you know, from the time I started this presentation, there's been hundreds of new articles added there. So rather than kind of combat or fight, you know, what's happening out there with people, you know, finding information other ways, we're finding a number of libraries remaining relevant and you know, holding on to their roles as gateways and portals of knowledge by finding ways, creative ways to partner with the Google Scholars and partner with Wikipedia. And what that looks like, you know, it's materializing in a number of ways. But the OCLC Research Initiative, they actually are partnering with Wikipedia for the Wikipedia Library Project, and they feel a social responsibility, an educational responsibility to make sources for citations there more accessible to Wikipedia editors, which in turn is ensuring more accuracy in Wikipedia. So I think we're going to see more and more partnerships arise like that. Another thing I want to point out is if libraries are not being used as much as resources for books and, you know, physical research materials, what can we do with library spaces? And so we're beginning to see libraries offer training sessions and other sorts of programs for using, you know, for learning how to use technologies and other sorts of things, even photography workshops. So they're still perceived as, you know, learning facilities. Maybe just different types of learnings are taking place, especially as we know when talking about things like the Makerspace movement. The libraries are particularly and perfectly suited for Makerspaces and things like 3D printers because they happen to be that kind of central place on campus where people are going to learn and research. And finally, in the report, we talk about technologies to watch. And here are the 6 that made the cut in this inaugural report. But the one that we're going to talk about briefly here today is mobile apps, which is placed in the near-term horizon, meaning adoption of mobile apps is very common now and so very imminent. One example of a library using mobile apps really successfully would be the Bavarian State Library in Germany. They offer many different apps that allow people to interact and explore resources housed at their library in more interactive ways. So they're able to explore ancient texts with augmented reality, other location-based features, and even some georeferencing and maps that they have available. So just things to think about. I know Duke University libraries are using the Browsing app, which has made all of the resources available in a mobile database. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more libraries open up mobile access and really emphasize making their databases and websites more user-friendly for tablets and smartphones. So I'd love to talk more about all these great topics, but I know everyone sitting here in this audience is thinking, hey, I agree with that topic, or I disagree, or why didn't topic X, Y, or Z make it in? Well, we want to hear from you, and we want your voice to be included. So please consider nominating yourself to serve on the next expert panel. There's the link to do it. And furthermore, you might be interested in some of these projects and think, hey, I'm running a project that's really similar. Well, we definitely want to hear from you, so please feel free to submit your project through a very brief form that we have to go.nmc.org/project. You may just see yourself in the next edition of the NMC Horizon Report. And I think that's my time here. Thanks so much for checking out the Horizon Report, and hope to hear from you all soon.
Samantha, super cool. Thank you so much. And now we will hear from Ayub Ajmi, Digital Communications and Learning Initiatives Librarian at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's really interesting topics, and I took a look at the report earlier, and it's really interesting. I encourage everyone to go ahead and download it. In this presentation, I will talk about our experience using a wearable device, Google Glass. As everybody or most of you know, Google Glass is the latest and probably the most controversial device manufactured by Google. There are a lot of controversies surrounding the device, but in this presentation, I will only talk about our experience from an educational perspective. A little bit about the UMKC School of Law. The University of Missouri Kansas City School of Law is a public law school located in downtown Kansas City. Along with the regular classes, the UMKC Law School also provides many opportunities for internships, externships, and clinical experiences. Technology plays a big part in our curriculum, as our goal is not only to prepare our students to become tech-savvy, but we want them to be early adopters in their field and use technology to enhance and advance their practices. So when we had the chance to explore with Google Glass, we jumped on it, and we did so on the one-day sale on April 15, 2014. We knew back then that the device is still in its beta release and not yet ready for public consumption, but we wanted to become Google Glass explorers so we can learn and see how it can help us improve our students' learning experience through the amazing features and capabilities promised by Google. So we started by setting up some goals, and we needed to use the device as is, out of the box, without hacking it or building any custom applications. First, because we don't have the skills necessary to do so, and second, because we only had one device and we don't want to break it. So our first use case is virtual tours. At the UMKC Law School, we invite prospective students to experience the school firsthand. We usually match them with the prospective students with an emissary student, that they share the same idea, same interest and background. They have walked through the school, they visit the facilities, talk to other students, and also assist to a class or two. So using Google Glass, we can offer first-person perspective to remote students who cannot make it to Kansas City. The next use case is social media event coverage. The school holds many social events with the current student, alumni, and community. Our communication department personnel are very active in social media, and using Google Glass during our events will allow us to easily share pictures and updates to engage our audience. The last use case is to record the practice interviews. In many of our classes, students are required to record their practices in the role-playing exercise. Normally, our students either check out handycams, use the built-in camera system in our courtrooms, or use their own devices. So by using Google Glass, students will have the opportunity to focus on the content and not being distracted by the technology. The video recorded can then easily be shared with an instructor. Well, those were our objectives based on what is being advertised by Google. However, the reality is far less glamorous. So we faced some practical obstacles that just make the device unusable in many situations. In one of the promotional video released by Google, there is a clip where they invited a physics teacher to hang out with a group of students live from a certain lab in Europe using Google Glass. The video is very inspiring and demonstrates how virtual trips can help students visit and learn about places and subjects that otherwise could not afford to visit. However, the video call feature was dropped from Google Glass during a firmware update. The reason for dropping this feature is not clear, but there are no native alternatives to that application. There are some third-party applications for video conferencing, but installing third-party application will require some advanced skills, and it will also break the warranty on the device. So when you install a third-party application, you do it at your own risk. Google Glass is a connected device, and most of its applications rely on internet to function. The connection can be established by pairing the device to a smartphone or by setting the Wi-Fi network using Glass app available for Android and iOS devices. The possibility of occurring additional charges related to cell phone data plans is a burden in itself. Using Wi-Fi connection when available is more reliable and cost-effective. However, Google Glass can only connect to personal Wi-Fi connections. That means you cannot connect the device to the internet in places such as airports, hotels, and schools that require WPA protocol, which basically means username and password. So not being able to do video hangouts with prospective students and not even be able to connect the device to our network left us with few options. The only thing we could do was hands-free video recording, but even that was not without some workaround and fixes. So during this first year or 6 months, we were able to do a video tour of the law school library. The video was done entirely using Google Glass. The quality of the video and audio can be good when in good environment. Basically, you will need to remain still or make short video clips so the movement of the camera doesn't impact the quality of the video. In our case, the library tour was walkthrough videos on throughout the building, and we did our best to minimize the movement, but the final video was very shaky. So at the end, we decided not to use the video tour, and we will probably make a new one with a regular camera and tripod, or if we use Google Glass, we will probably do short clips. Another thing we noticed during our test was the heat generated by Google Glass. All the components of the Google Glass are located between the battery and the camera, and they tend to get really hot when using applications that require a lot of processing, such as videos and GPS navigation. The temperature can easily reach 50 degrees Celsius. In this picture from digitalversus.com, taken using a thermal camera, shows where the heat is concentrated. The temperature feels even higher due to the direct contact with the skin. In another study published by Rice University, it shows more details about the heat and other characteristics of Google Glass. Google claims that the battery can last for 1 day in a typical use, but some features like video recording are more battery intensive. Rice University article shows that with one single charge, the battery can record up to 43 minutes. But in practice, you won't even reach 43 minutes due to the other tasks involved during the process. Basically, when you record a video, you tend to look at what you recorded, play back, and probably delete, and then record again. So all these small tasks that you do, they will drain the battery. So with 43 minutes of charge, you will probably end up with 15 to 20 minutes of usable video. As a conclusion, during our 6 months of testing Google Glass device, we learned a lot about it, but we still hope to engage our faculty and students as well, so we can have a better idea of how we can use it in classrooms. From the 3 tasks we have set, we were only able to accomplish the hands-free videos. We have students who use the device to record role-playing assignments, and they expressed their satisfaction with it. We also recorded a video tour of the library. although the final video won't be used, but we might try again and do shorter version to reduce the camera movements. And finally, we had international students who used the device to record their day-to-day activities in the law school and Kansas City. This video will be used during our recruitment trips abroad. For the future, we want to experiment more with the applications, and hopefully we can design our own application. But we are still looking for ideas. So we are looking for something that won't interfere with the normal pace of a class and how faculty teach. Something where a wearable device will be an asset and not a distraction. That's the conclusion of my short presentation, and there is some contact information, and also if you visit the website you can find a link to the video tour we did and other video that we did with Google Glass. And thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Before we go on, this is Michael again. I'm watching all the nice use of the hashtag on Twitter, so thank you for that. I also want to remind everyone that has joined us here for the webcast that if you have a question or a comment, you can send those in at any time via the red Q&A box, and we will be taking questions in just a bit. But now I would like to present to you Susan Hildreth, who's Director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, who will round out our presentations for us today. Susan, welcome. Thank you, and please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Michael. I'm very glad to be here with everybody today, and the information I've heard already is really exciting, and I'm particularly excited about embracing need for radical change, because I think that's really what we need to do in our field, and some of the things I'm going to be talking about today I think will reflect that. So just for those of you who might not be familiar, the Institute of Museum and Library Services is the federal agency that provides support for the nation's libraries and museums. We primarily focus on grant making, but we also do policy development, research, convening, and many other important topics. So we're going to talk a little bit today about libraries as community learning partners, and we're really focusing, there's many ways we can be community learning partners, but we're focusing on STEM, makerspaces, and badging. Just to set the context a little bit, you know, and my colleagues have made some very interesting remarks already that show that there has been a shift, I think, from the 20th century to the 21st century in how we think about libraries and museums. And just to highlight that, it's amazing when we think about the communication that we had for so long that was really primarily one way, and now communication in our institutions is very multi-directional. Our institutions in the 20th century acted very independently or really in their own silo, and now they're acting in highly collaborative partnerships. We are really no longer just in a community, but embedded in the community, no matter what the community we serve is, and we are certainly focused on learning outcomes. Although learning outcomes in our work had been implied, I think, in the past, it's now very purposeful. So I really think this shift in the concepts of libraries and museums helps set the context for innovative libraries, interactive, highly collaborative, embedded in the community, and focused on learning objectives. So how does that really look in real life? Well, I think STEM learning is really an important function of providing that kind of interactivity that's happening in our libraries today. So I'm just going to mention a little bit about STEM. You know, STEM in our world, I think, has lots of different concepts about what is STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. But we also have folks who want it to be STEAM, and they want to put that A in there for arts. And sometimes the arts is another word as well. And we also have STREAM, where we add reading. So no matter what you call it, it's really all about STEM. It's interesting that I was at a presentation where someone talked about STEM as strategies that engage minds, and I think that's really what we're trying to do with STEM. But of course, STEM is a clear focus for IMLS, and we are supporting projects that improve learning and 21st century skills. I recently did a blog post in September on STEM, and I really made sure that everybody knows quality STEM education is so important for the nation as a whole and for individual citizens. A robust and capable STEM workforce is crucial to the success in the United States, particularly in our competitiveness. STEM education focuses on future security and economic success and really opportunities for STEM careers for our youth. So we know the U.S. is still behind in STEM, so we have to really focus on that. But we are also really excited that we're acknowledging the important role of libraries in informal learning. So recently at IMLS, we have awarded $13 million in grants in FY 2014. STEM continues to be a funding priority for us in 2015, and we think it's really an important area for investment. Just a couple of projects that we have invested in FY 2014, and I know this is an international broadcast, but I'm highlighting a couple of California projects in reference or in acknowledgement of our great partner at San Jose State. So the Institute for Study of Knowledge Management in Education is partnering with the New Hampshire Department of Education, ALA, the American Association of School Librarians, and others to engage in-service and pre-service school librarians and teachers in multiple settings in the use of curated open educational resources for STEM teaching and learning. It's really exciting. This project is exciting, and the outcome should be the creation and sharing of high-quality standards-aligned instructional units and text sets focused on STEM inquiry and a replicable and scalable community of practice. Also, we're really excited to be working with the San Mateo Community College District, Cañada College. They are going to be working with their STEM for ECE, Early Childhood Education Program, which will engage early childhood education students in activities to increase their understanding and comfort with STEM. They'll be partnering with San Mateo County Office of Education, the Redwood City Public Library to provide online tutorials, one-on-one support to assist ECE students in using library research to incorporate STEM topics in their coursework. So this project is really exciting because it's getting at STEM education for the earliest folks that we're serving. So I'm going to just highlight on another investment that IMLS makes. That's the National STEM Video Game Challenge. We're a sponsor of this activity, and we were able to provide support in 2013, and in 2014, the fourth national challenge is just launching anytime now. You'll see information about it on our blog, which you'll get to link to later in the presentation. I'm really excited about this activity because it supports the focus of libraries as avenues and places for game creation. Libraries sponsor workshops and help kids in their community really try to develop games and participate in this challenge. So it really positions libraries as supporters and participants in the gaming world. And I think that's just one function of what we want to, that radical change we're trying to embrace. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the DIY and maker culture. I know Samantha talked a little bit about Makerspaces and how libraries are really primed to provide that kind of space in their community. Makerspaces are being created in libraries all around the country, and it really is coming out of the do-it-yourself, the DIY culture. And I imagine you're becoming familiar with this world. It's really taken off in the last couple years, but it's still surprising that I talk about Makerspaces around the country, and I still find that some folks, particularly in the education world, are not familiar with this phenomenon. And I think it's really something that is representative of our 21st century learning skills and is becoming a big part of our communities. So Makerspaces really do support STEM learning, of course, and they help 21st century skills be developed in these environments. So they're spaces that can support creativity for all ages by providing basic materials from 3D laser printers, but it's not all about technology. You can have wire, string, fabric, anything you need to make something that you want to create. And particularly as less space is needed for printed materials in our libraries, I think we can make room for makerspaces which are attractive to all ages. And I have a link here to a blog post that I did recently about the White House Maker Fair. We had the first annual White House Maker Fair in June of 2014, and we were excited to recognize that the maker movement is capturing the imagination of the administration. Libraries and museums are helping us think about new ways to engage learners, and IMLS is making some specific investments in Makerspaces, and I'll talk a little bit about those on the next slide. We are excited about partnering with the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, and we also have some other key partners in this effort. The North Carolina State University Library, which is another great example of a library that has incorporated all kinds of creativity into its new building. We're also working with the Chicago Public Library and the Exploratorium in San Francisco, and we're building a field-wide understanding of making in libraries and museums, and we will be developing a framework and suite of resources, including hands-on professional development experiences and a community of practice that should be available shortly. So we'll make sure we get the info out on that very soon. We also are excited to fund efforts in Philadelphia, where on-the-floor makerspaces are going to be created in libraries serving underserved neighborhoods in North Philadelphia. Through the act of making, participants of all ages will have the opportunity to design meaningful digital and physical objects that capture the richness and diversity of their neighborhoods. These place-based, interest-driven, and mentor-guided makerspaces will provide a replicable, scalable model for libraries and museums nationally. So we're really excited about that investment. And finally, the Idaho Commission for Libraries, the Idaho State Library, has established the Make It at the Library project, and this supports implementation of makerspaces in 11 public libraries across the state. It's in its second year, and the focus is on delivering creative STEM-based learning opportunities for tweens and teens to help prepare them for the future. For those are some exciting activities that we're doing in making. And I would also like to take this opportunity to just talk a little bit about the MakerLab Club that is being initiated by 3D Systems. So 3D Systems, in collaboration with YALSA, Young Adult Library Services Association, is committed to expanding young people's access to 21st century tools like 3D design, scanning, and printing. The MakerLab Club is a brand new community of thousands of U.S. libraries committed to advancing 3D digital literacy via dedicated equipment, staff training, and increased public access. So 3D Systems will provide new 3D printers to qualified libraries across the country. Recipients will be selected via an application process and are expected to join the MakerLab Club, as well as provide access to 3D printing and design programs and services for their communities. So big news, libraries can still apply via an online application until November 17th. Printers will be allocated on a competitive basis, but you can get up to 4 free Cube 3D printers. So check this out on their website. Great way to get started with 3D printing in your community. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about digital badging. So badging, I think, is really a natural next step for creative learning environments like Makerspaces, digital media labs, and some of the other activities our other speakers have talked about. Badging provides an effective system to certify and validate skills mastered in informal learning settings. And I think we really do need to identify ways we can really credential or acknowledge the work, the learning that goes on in our libraries and museums, these informal learning settings. So, you know, I really believe that disruption in the K-12 education system and even higher ed is coming, if not upon us. And whenever I bring up badging when I talk around the country, I always have questions raised about, well, what is this really something that's going to work? And, you know, I don't know, but informal learning has been filling gaps in the learning ecosystem for years. It's time for us to step up and validate the important work that we do in that area. So just a little bit about some of the things we're supporting with digital badging. I did a great blog post on that in March, just talking about how digital badging is becoming part of our lives and helping to document our achievements in formal and informal settings. Also, there are a number of federal agencies who are looking at badging: the National Science Foundation, the U.S. Department of Education, as well as the MacArthur Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Mozilla. So a lot of folks are looking at badging as a way to move forward in our informal learning settings. IMLS has also funded work at the Brooklyn Public Library in partnership with library software developer BiblioCommons to implement a large-scale digital badging project this summer. It's modeled on the Chicago's Successful Summer of Learning program, which I'll mention in a minute, but BiblioCommons is providing an online badging system platform to be piloted at Brooklyn. It was piloted this summer, and many other library partners through their public programs and volunteer initiatives. So it's really a great opportunity to establish the community library as a safe and supportive environment for kids and really all ages of learning. So look out for more information on that project. The Summer of Learning is really an exciting program that is beginning to take hold around the country. It began in Chicago in 2013. This summer it was implemented in over 7 cities, including Los Angeles and Pittsburgh. And it really is about bringing together the wide variety of informal learning activities going on in our cities for our youth in the summer, bringing them together so they can work more effectively together, build upon each other, and also, of course, have a badging system built in so kids can really acknowledge the formal learning that goes on in the summer. And just briefly, in terms of the Badge Alliance, the Badge Alliance is a network of organizations and individuals working together to build and support an open badging ecosystem with a focus on shared values, including openness, innovation, and giving agency or power to the learner. So that's really the way the badging movement is being organized in the United States, and it would be really good to check out some of that information on that. So we have plenty of ways to find out about what we're doing, and please sign up for our blog and all kinds of information we have online, our Facebook page, and we do share lots of information about what's going on in libraries and museums through these activities. And I also just wanted to close with my email if you have any questions, and hopefully you'll have some questions that we'll get up there and be able to answer very shortly. Thank you.
Oh, Susan, thank you so much. Thank you for that. And I've been making notes like crazy here. Here's what I heard, just to give this back to you all. Just three things: a need for radical change within our libraries and in our roles, a need to explore emerging technology and how it might fit into our mission and what we do in libraries, and the need to promote the library as classroom, both in informal and formal learning, and the library is a place where things are created. So with that in mind, we have some questions, and I'm gonna, I think we'll take one for Samantha, and then Ayub, and then Susan, and then we'll see what else comes up in the screen. So Samantha, what are some of the technologies that did not make the report that may be seen as kind of out there, and I'm doing air quotes, but could be mainstream one day?
You know, that's a great question, and I think this came up in the presentation today as well, but wearable technologies is one of those technologies that's always heavily talked about for the Horizon Report series, but did not make the library report in particular, though it was in recent higher ed and even K-12 reports. So this, I think, goes beyond Google Glass and smart watches, and just thinking about 20 years, 30 years from now, because I do spend a lot of time in my posts at the NMC thinking about 5 years from now. But just to totally blow your minds and maybe even creep you out a little, the next incarnation of wearable technology that we've been researching is embeddable technology. Yes, technology that literally can get under your skin. A couple examples would be an engineering researcher who has invented what's called a Southpaw, or embeddable, implantable GPS that he's implanting in his shoulder. And then we have implantable earbuds. So the next time you see one of your colleagues kind of smiling and daydreaming in a very important meeting, it's very possible that he or she is jamming out to Led Zeppelin. So just interesting things to think about as we begin to think even beyond the next 5 years in terms of what's coming.
Okay, I actually have said on the record I would like to have my Fitbit embedded so I would never ever lose it. So I would get mine for an embedded pedometer. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Question. Okay. And don't get mad at me, but I have described Google Glass as feeling a little weird at times, so don't get mad at me. But I'm interested, since you've done this exploration, do you think that Google Glass is ready for education?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm not sure. The answer is I'm not sure. Just for clarification, the Google Glass is available now for everyone. Anybody interested can go ahead and buy Google Glass, but Google Glass is not available for organizations. I mean, when you buy the Google Glass, they ask for your name and not your organization. And also, when you see the apps available by Google or even third-party apps, most of them are oriented toward individuals. When you have a Google Glass, you need a Google Plus account, and whatever data, whatever pictures or videos or anything you do on Google Glass will be synced with your Google Plus account. So it's basically the same deal that libraries, or the struggle that libraries have with e-readers. E-readers are mostly personal, so when you want to share them in a classroom or in a library, you might have a problem, because each time you want to share the device, you need to reset, you need to make sure that the personal data are wiped out from the system, and all sorts of trouble that just make it difficult to be used in education. And the other thing, from the usability perspective, I still don't see any application where Google Glass will play a difference. Most applications available can be done better and in more discrete manner using mobile device, for example. So that's the thing I'm looking for. I need something where my students or the faculty can use Google Glass for a reason without them being feeling awkward or any sort of bad feeling.
Right, absolutely. Well, that's very interesting. I appreciate that. And a question for Susan. And Susan, I taught the hyperlinked library class a year ago at this time with my colleague, friend, and co-instructor Kyle Jones as a large-scale learning opportunity for library professionals. It was professional development. We called it a MOOC. So it was a massive open online course. We had about 400 people. And we did badging as well. We had badging for doing various things in the community platform we use, which was WordPress-based, as well as for assignments, and then some hidden badges that we awarded when people did really cool things. So I think digital badging is super interesting. But who, Susan, and this is for you, who do you think will determine the skills and abilities that are required for different levels of certification?
You know, Michael, I think that is a great question, and it's a question I have whenever I talk about digital badging. I would say that really we're at a point in the development of this system that is evolving. I think many of the digital badging activities are locally based, so there could be a local interest group or entity that develops certification. And in terms of some of the activities, national organizations may develop the certification. I think that's really a challenge for us to try to identify competency levels and determine how we can really make them functional and practical in the digital badging setting. But I think, as you said, it's quite interesting, and I think that libraries investing in digital badging and library education investing at this point in time, we're getting in really at the beginning of an initiative, and oftentimes libraries find themselves responding reactively or after something has been developed, trying to adapt ourselves to it. And I think we can really get in to the digital badging environment and help identify some of those issues, like developing agreed upon competencies at the beginning of the initiative instead of trying to react to it in the end.
That's very interesting, and I like that. Getting in, absolutely. One of the things in the Hyperlinked Library MOOC, we made the badges transportable over to Credly, which is a badge site, and a few folks were just thrilled with that because they are building their digital portfolios and showing off their badging. So interesting.
So, Michael, if I could just add one quick thing that I didn't get to add in terms of our work with Brooklyn Public Library and BiblioCommons. Badging for children is really, really exciting, but they often need to have, if they're under 14, parental permission to create a badge account, particularly a portable badge account they could put in their online knapsack. So one of the things we're investigating with Brooklyn is whether the permission that a child has been given to receive a library card could automatically translate into their badging permission so that they wouldn't have to go through an extra step and go to the parent or caregiver and get permission. So this is really exciting and another way of libraries being in on the ground floor and taking advantage of the development of this really interesting protocol.
I just heard some of the folks from Brooklyn talking at a meeting of state librarians in Cape May, New Jersey a couple weeks ago. It was very cool. Nice. Samantha, a question back to you. How might, in the work you've done, how might physical library spaces be reimagined to foster more active research and learning?
That's a great question. And I think I touched on this a little bit with my presentation, but there's definitely ways to dive deeper. So clearly some of my examples might be a little bit out there, but they're purely for the sake of getting people thinking. There was recently a library in Kentucky that ended up doing away with an entire floor that used to have floor-to-ceiling shelves with books because there wasn't a lot of patronage anymore. People weren't coming in and checking them out. So what they did was they transformed that space into an area where they invited local experts in specific fields to give workshops. One such workshop was a butchery course. I believe there was another one on 3D printing and making. And so while your library may not be set up for butchery classes or anything along those lines, just reimagining how a space in a library can be used for more face-to-face, immersive, and active learning. If you can invite people from campus, whether it's professors or whether you can invite local experts from your community to give workshops and just offer other types of learning and discovering opportunities at your library. In order to do that, you kind of need to rethink what kind of space that's going to take place in. So having the space to do things like that, I think, is going to become increasingly important.
Oh, super cool. I think the Butcher program, I think that was in Kansas. I've written about
Kansas.
that.
I knew it was one of the K-states.
Yeah.
My apologies for anyone who I offended. It's a K-state, I know that.
Oh, no worries about that. But I have a slide that I've put up about that program going on, and some of the people in the audience were like, because there they are. They're actually doing the butchering. I think we have time for one more question. Absolutely. Just one more quick question for IU. The UMKC Law School was also adopting Google Glass. Can you tell us something very briefly about that?
Well, the libraries the libraries inside the law school, which is good because we get to interact with students and faculty directly. So we offer the Google Glass for students and faculty. We had a lot of feedback from students more than faculty. And I understand because there is not a lot of things you can, as a faculty, to do with Google Glass. So until we have some good incentives on using the device, like I said before, I don't want to put the faculty on any weird situation where they feel uncomfortable and to delivering their courses. There are some applications that can be used, like you can take notes using Google Glass and then forward them, share them with students. But again, the issues I talked about, like the battery life and the heat issue, those are some serious issues that will most of our courses, they are an hour or 2 hours long. So if you have a device that only lasts 40 minutes, you can really use it. So those are my concerns, and I'm really looking forward to share it more with the faculty.
Oh, wonderful. Cool. Well, thank you. I want to thank, we're winding up here, so we just have a minute left. I want to thank all the folks that came to speak and to give us some highlights from the Library 2.0 conference. I want to thank all the folks that attended. If you enjoyed this webcast, please make sure to check Library Journal's upcoming webcast listing. Please visit libraryjournal.com/webcast for more information. And again, thank you to everyone that attended and submitted questions. This webcast will be archived in approximately 1 week, and we'll send you an email to tell you when it is available. You can find this webcast and other archived and forthcoming webcasts again at libraryjournal.com/webcast. So I am so excited just to see how all these things came together, centered around learning and exploration and our evolving role. So thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to all the attendees one more time, and please take care.